Welcome to our broadcast. Industrial corrosion is a costly catastrophe that's concealed by a curtain. That curtain is the veil shrouding industrial jacketing on pipes in vessels in industrial processing facilities. Our subject of study today, corrosion under insulation, better known as CUI. Our guest, an expert in the field of science, a metallurgist, a consultant for some of the world's largest industrial consortiums, Dr. Hira Alawalia, affectionately known as Dr. Metals. Doctor, welcome to our broadcast.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Doctor, I know that corrosion is a huge problem in industry all around the globe. If you could give us just kind of an example of the enormity of this problem of industrial corrosion, especially under insulation.
Yes. Well, if you look at corrosion itself, it's not only a costly problem, but also it's a safety and environmental issue. There was a study done by sponsored by the United States Federal Highway Administration and the National Association of Corrosion Engineers. And in this study, they found that the cost of corrosion was approximately 3.1% of the gross domestic product. In today's money, that is about $450 billion, which is equivalent to $1,500 per person per year. So the cost of corrosion is enormous.
Doctor, as we're looking at some of these industrial process plants with corrosion under insulation and chillers and hot liquids and those kinds of things, kind of give us an example of the perfect storm for the advent of this to begin.
Yes, so if you look at corrosion under insulation, this is really corrosion that occurs when you're covering a piece of pipe or a vessel with an insulating material. Now you can imagine a situation where if you take a piece of pipe and leave it and expose it to the environment, there will be some corrosion taking place there, but it'll be at a very low rate. Now you take the same piece of pipe and you add an insulation material to there, you now have a continuous exposure of that pipe to moisture, you have available oxygen, and as the temperature increases, the corrosion rate increases. So eventually you get thinning of the infrastructure.
Doctor, when in fact we're talking about the infrastructures, these infrastructures that are designed by engineers, is corrosion a factor as they design the plant?
Well, corrosion is always a factor when they design the plant, because one of the key things is to choose the right material construction. But very often, the process environment itself is taken into consideration, and engineers forget about what happens on the outside of the process equipment. For example, the corrosion under insulation. So because this is a out of sight, out of mind problem and doesn't occur immediately, but it'll occur over time. And unfortunately, our infrastructure, both in the chemical industry and many other industries, is aging. So a lot of these problems are occurring now, and there's a great opportunity for us to do something about it and design it in the correct manner.
So, in other words, maybe insulation is kind of an afterthought in designing these plants?
Well, insulation is part of the designing of the plants, but unfortunately, the corrosion part is not taken into consideration. Many times, insulating materials are used which may wick moisture and create a corrosive environment. So more effort needs to be taken into consideration of what the influence of the insulating material is on the corrosion of your process equipment.
Now, Doctor, how is this usually discovered by a plant engineer or safety manager? Does it usually take them by surprise?
Yes, unfortunately, this is the big issue. It does take them by surprise. Like I mentioned before, it is out of sight, out of mind issue. And very often, when a leak occurs in the pipe is when they discover it. Unfortunately, there have been a number of instances where corrosion has occurred in the petrochemical industry, where we've had explosions occur because of this. But not only that, we have a number of cases where we've had to evacuate whole towns because of corrosion under insulation. It just takes one small hole in a pipe to cause a leak of very hazardous chemicals.
Okay, Doctor, is there a magic bullet or at least a measure for, correcting the problem with proper insulation, and what would that be?
One of the key things is to use a insulation system that does not allow the ingress of water into the into the insulation and into the pipe surface. So you want an insulation which has low permeability. You want an insulation that has the same thermal expansion properties as carbon steel or stainless steel, because this will allow for the pipe and insulation to expand at the same rate and avoid breakages and therefore corrosion under insulation. You want an insulation that has very good stable thermal properties, because if you do not have good thermal properties, you can cause the insulation to fail and have an ingress of water to cause corrosion under insulation. And one of the insulations that I have seen in the chemical industry considered to be the premium insulation is a cellular glass, also known as foam glass, which has been very good in reducing the instances of corrosion under insulation.